Hello, and welcome to another Nonfinito BG painting tutorial. Today we are painting from the tabletop skirmish game Trench Crusade, the Lion of Jabir. So right now I'm just putting down a somewhat purple wash all over the model. I decided to do things a little different with this model since there's a lot of flesh on this model. I decided to prime it white, and so now I'm just putting down that purple to get into the recesses to start with my base skin tone. But I'm applying it everywhere so that it ties the whole thing together when I start putting more layers on top. Now I'm just going in with a clean brush that's soaked in mineral spirits, and I'm just dabbing away all the raised areas to move that pigment off of those raised areas. Kind of allows me to really map out where those highlights are going to be, and instead of removing pigment, it actually washes it into the recesses. Normally I would take like a makeup sponge or something and wipe away, but this allows me like a quicker working time because I don't have to wait the 20-30 minutes for it to dry before wiping away. I can start doing this process immediately. Alright, now I'm just adding a red wash. So again, the purplish kind of goes into the recesses. I'll lay down a strong red for a lot of areas that aren't going to be getting hit directly by the light, but it will be the majority of the skin. And then afterwards I'll go with a lighter color on all the raised areas hitting directly by the light. And then after that I'll put the actual skin tone over all that. So it's gonna look really messy. It's gonna look honestly not that great in the beginning stages, but I promise it all comes together eventually. And having these all be washes early and having those washes kind of mix in with each other, you'll see that it kind of allows a lot of randomness to happen, which is what I want. I don't want it to look like a paint by numbers. And then using this clean dry brush here, I start mixing those washes together, and then also pulling away a lot of pigment that's pooling on top away from the raised areas and into the recessed areas. Then once it's sat for an extended amount of time, maybe 20-30 minutes, and a lot of the mineral spirit has evaporated, now I could go in with a blending brush and really blend in that purple and that red. The underbelly seems to be very wet, so you'll notice I just move on from that really quick. Just going around just blending those two washes, not completely together, else I'm just going to end up with the whole thing looking purple. You know, I still want red areas and I still want purple areas, but the transitions is what I want to blend. And all the while I'm thinking about all those areas, like those scapulas, those shoulders, those elbows. You know, there's not really a whole lot of I guess blood flow going into that area, so those are actually going to be the brightest areas because it's bone directly underneath that skin, right? So I'm not going to allow too much color in those areas. Alright, now I'm just adding a little bit more contrast with a black wash. Not going too heavy with it at first. Just pulling out some of those details. You know, working with a model that's primed white, it feels like it takes a lot longer for it to get to where you want versus having a black primed model. But I like what it does with building skin tones with a white base. But that's just me. Alright, here is that skin tone that I'm going over, pretty much over the whole model. Well, not the whole model, but everywhere where there's skin. Even over the purple and over the red. And all the areas that's still white, you'll notice it looks a lot more fleshy, but then you start getting those fleshy tones are a little bit more like shadow flesh tones. You know, and that's just done automatically with that purple that is underneath. And there's not a whole lot of paint on the brush right now. I don't want to go too crazy with it, because if you put down a lot of paint over even those purple tones, it'll just completely cover it up. So it's actually almost like dry brush amounts on that brush. And if it's a large surface area, then I'll put a little bit more paint in that area, but then I'll take a clean dry brush and push it around with a brush that doesn't have any paint on it, and it'll pick up paint and move it around for me. Now going back to that underbelly, I think I've given enough time to dry, so it should be easier to work with. Alright, now I'm going to start hitting a little bit of highlight. Obviously, I never go pure white. When you use white out of the tube, it kind of just makes your piece look chalky, you know. So here it's a very light ochre color. I'm hitting where all that bone is going to be right underneath the skin. Certain areas like this bicep or back of the tricep area where maybe there isn't a whole lot of blood flow happening in that area. You know, this creature went through a lot of, well, this person, according to the lore, this is a person who went through a lot of transformation. I feel like all that internal transformation, the skin's barely holding on to keep all that contained, you know, so I want it to feel like it's being stretched out. That's why it's so purple and almost bruised all over the body, you know. And here I'm just adding a little bit of like a red wash around the vein area and also like in between the fingers. Just dial back some of that contrast that's happening around certain areas. Just dial back some of that purple tone and kind of just like a little bit more muted. Make it a little bit more believable that it's skin. And then moving on to all like the bronze or gold medallions. It's all over the lion. Just going over with a wash of burnt umber. And then also a burnt umber wash over the helmet as well. And now I'm highlighting the edges in the raised area of these medallions with a yellow ochre. I don't do too much rendering on these, like even though they would be shiny, and I don't want it to take away too much attention from the model's skin. I feel like that's kind of the focus, at least for me, on this model, and I don't want this thing that, like, you know, non-metallic shine take away from all this work that I'm doing to the skin, you know. And I think that's where, I mean, that's kind of where the channel name comes from. Non finito is the aesthetic of not finished. I don't ever let something feel not finished, but I won't push something far enough to take away from something else, if that makes sense. So here I'm going over with a warm white, yellow highlight. Just all on the edges, right? And then we get the general, like, your mind will fill in the blanks, right? Will tell you, oh, this is like a bronze material, and you won't have to do too much. Now I'm going over with a yellow ochre over the helmet. start working on the shine. Again, this rendering process on everything that's like a metal is very simple process. Now I'm just adding another wash on the main. Realize as far as contrast, it wasn't dark enough. It was kind of melting with the rest of the figure, so just adding a wash to get into the recesses just to make it a little darker. And same thing with the skirt, and then I go over with like a burnt umber wash as well. And then back to that wash I used, that red wash. I put it around the chin area. The reference image that I'm using show blood around the mouth, and also I want the hands and the feet to look a little bit more lively. Now I go with a very little black pigment, I took a black wash, wiped most of the mineral spirits off of the brush, and now I'm just hitting tiny little areas where I just want the deepest recesses on the back. And then I add a burnt umber wash just in a few areas in the mane, just so like the mane doesn't feel like it's its own entity. It kind of ties it together with the rest of the warmth that I use for the model. And then all these glyphs that were etched into the skin, I want them to seem like they're fresh. Now I'm going over with some villainy inks. This is their crimson something. Kind of simulates blood, but I like all the pigment, the debris that kind of clumps on the bottom of the container. It kind of adds a little bit of that griminess. So I'm putting that around the areas of those glyphs, like almost like there's coagulated blood that is attached to the skin and stuff. I'll put this in places and it kind of gives the model like a little bit more liveliness. I'll put it like in a lot of the recesses. In hindsight, I think I might have overdone it with the villainy ink. I don't know, I think I just got a little carried away because I like what was happening, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. Did I overdo it, or did I not put enough? You'll notice I don't hit the tips of those scapula and then that ball joint in the shoulder. I don't hit the tops of those with this. Like I said, that's where I feel like the bone is right underneath the skin. There isn't a whole lot of blood flow. Just put some of that right around the mouth area. And I put a little bit around the medallions and on the skirt. But yeah, this paint job is coming to an end. It was fun. Am I the only one that's super excited about Trench Crusade? You know, I did get the Beast Pledge, and I found somebody printing these on eBay, and I couldn't help myself. I had to get a couple of factions. But yeah, let me know what you think. It's still a little bit wet. Once it dries, that shininess will go down, but I'm happy how it came out. Basing still needs to get done. I probably won't do a video on that unless somebody shows some interest in it. But if you follow me on Instagram, I'll post an updated picture of this model on a base. But yeah, thank you for watching.